All right, YouTube, are you prepared to see some total mental gymnastics and people completely ignore the existence of the Constitution? Obama, according to the AP, which tweeted this out about an hour ago, it's been picked up now by Huffington Post and a few others, is going to come forward in regards to an attempt to get a certain memo disclosed, giving the administration's justification for drone strikes on American citizens. Now, we'll preface this by saying this pertains to strikes on foreign soil. As far as we know, out in the open and clear, there have been no drone strikes on American citizens on American soil. Um, Oddly enough, the ACLU, which is seen by groups like Fox as an extreme left outlet, an extreme leftist organization, is spearheading this, along with the New York Times of all places, suing essentially to get this memo disclosed. And Obama apparently has decided to, instead of bothering to, actually avert this through appeal, they've just said fuck it and they're going to release this material. And Obama's apparently going to come out, I don't know, today or sometime tomorrow to talk about this. Interestingly enough, it's now also being reported that he just hired a civil defense attorney. A criminal defense attorney, which indicates he's lawyering up for a reason. Some speculated early on it had to do with this other nation that's been spied on by this Somalget thing through the NSA. Actually, now it looks like this is more likely the reason. Possibly Obama realizes the jig might be up if he is, ends up sued, essentially as a result of breaking the Constitution. Because the Constitution gives due process to well, it doesn't give it affirms the right of citizens to obtain due process under the law. That means a fair trial, a speedy trial. They have the right to face their accusers. They have a right to trial by jury. And they are deprived of all of these things. They're deprived of even any sort of trial when you unilaterally decide that they are combatants and thus to kill them. Now, the Constitution does allow for a citizen to be charged with treason if they've joined some other force, if they're a citizen and they've joined some other militia and they are actively attacking the United States. However, again, this is overseas. This isn't in the U.S. These groups are labeled terrorist groups, but this specific individual was not linked to an attack. Anwar al-Awlaki wasn't linked to attacks on American citizens on our soil. It's not clear that this specific group that he was a part of, this particular part of Al-Qaeda, was doing anything at the time. And to tell the truth, the Constitution is not clear whether militants, guerrillas, partisans, you give them these different terms, terrorists, combatants, most of which are arbitrary definitions anyway. It's not clear that it gives the government the right to unilaterally declare that they are actually engaged in warfare against the United States. I would say they're not. This isn't a military in the commonly understood sense. This is a group of people who conduct attacks on all sorts of nations. But they don't themselves actually represent any nation. And to deprive this individual or any other of due process as guaranteed under the Constitution because they're citizens, simply because they happen to be suspected of terrorist activity, is clearly not lawful under our Constitution. And Obama's going to come out, and you can bet Carney will come out afterwards during the press releases and so forth, and they'll sit there and nervously answer the questions and hope that everybody is willing to overlook this. People should not be overlooking this. It is a one small step from using drones on citizens overseas to conducting all sorts of other nasty things, assassinations and so forth, for people who may not be a member of any terrorist organization. And for legal purposes, the term terrorist is dubious at best anyway. They've sort of gulled the population into thinking that there's such a severe threat from these scattered groups of Islamic terrorists, which, by the way, we're funding and arming on a regular basis, that we then need to violate our own constitutional law. I don't see it that way. I see the United States government, the CIA and so forth, giving these groups weapons, giving them aid and logistic support and money. And I say, why then If these groups are getting all of our help, is there any reason to believe that the government itself, by its own token, saying it can drone citizens for being associated with these groups, isn't itself guilty of treason? If this is a foreign group, which is considered for these legal purposes a military force, because that can be the only way they can possibly justify such a drone strike, if this is to be considered a foreign military source, not simply a group of partisans or criminals or anything like that, but an actual oppositional military force, then the government itself is committing treason every time it gives any of these groups any form of support, whether directly or indirectly, and you know that it's both. Because we have been giving weapons and aid to al-Qaeda agents in Syria, because we're so concerned that Syria won't fall and Assad will remain powerful and continue to cock-block oil pipelines to the Mediterranean. It's clearly unconstitutional. Clearly. So when AP comes out and says Obama's about to give his justification, all I see is Obama's about to do insane numbers of mental gymnastics, trying to cop out a reason why he's allowed to violate the Constitution simply under the idea that we have to be kept safe from groups that we're supporting in the first place. It's ridiculous. I don't understand why anybody, after seeing this news, would even bother to support Obama. Because there is no way that he can justify using drones to kill U.S. citizens. There is no way that this group, Al-Qaeda, it's not flying under the banner of France or even the Saudis or Russia or any of these other groups. In fact, we are the ones most closely associating ourselves, and the Saudis, which are an ally of the United States, with Al-Qaeda. We are now the ones funding primarily Al-Qaeda. The same Al-Qaeda that we took a decade of our time and billions of our dollars to fight. Why are we doing this? And then why would we then allow a sitting president to come out and lie with a straight face and try to give some half-assed justification for using what is quite obviously unconstitutional means to stop citizens, apparently, from associating with groups we ourselves are propping up? Al-Qaeda probably wouldn't even exist if not for U.S. action. It would have withered away like so many other separatist movements and eventually gotten picked off by nationalists or communists or some other group that didn't like them. Because that's what tends to happen to such groups. Or they would have taken over one township and they'd be running a couple of opium fields right now and they'd be forgotten because they wouldn't have any power or political connections. We are the ones in the 80s who first armed these groups, or which would later become Al-Qaeda. We armed them. We gave them money. This was under Reagan. Money and arms and logistics support and training and all sorts of other merchandise and everything we could possibly give them. For Obama, as I mentioned in my last video, to be doing essentially the same thing while at the same time claiming the right to decide to kill citizens of the United States, regardless of where in the world they are, without due process, on the trumped-up charge that they might kind of sort of be in with these groups, is wrong. It's a lie. Obama is lying. What other word can you give to it? He obviously either does not understand or does not care about constitutional laws. If Bush had done the same thing, people would have been up in arms. The same people that lick Obama's feet would have been completely ass-blasted if Bush had been doing this sort of thing. They would have screamed tyrant so hard it would have been heard around the world, and Bush's approval would have sunk to 2% overnight, and he would have been ousted. He would have been forced to resign because there'd be 10 million people outside of D.C. But because Obama happens to be a Democrat, these people magically think that there's nothing wrong with it. This makes no sense. Why are these people not raising up with the same collective voice they used against Bush, who did exactly the same things, only less than Obama does, and continue to engage in this stupid partisan bullshit that they always have, and unfortunately seem always to be likely to do? So Obama can say whatever the fuck he wants. He's not going to convince me. He's not going to convince anyone with a working brain, because clearly what he is doing with drone strikes on American citizens is unconstitutional. It's treasonous, actually. When you really think about it, he's committing treason. He's completely violating the United States Constitution. I'm sure very few people will point this out because they don't want to get labeled racist or a Tea Party or something like that, but I am willing to pull that definition out and apply it to Obama because that's exactly what he's doing. That's about all. Peace out.